On May 8, 2015, inside a roaring United Center, Derrick Rose didn't just hit a buzzer beater. He reclaimed a narrative that the basketball world had already moved on from. By 2015, Derrick Rose wasn't supposed to be this guy anymore. The league had already written the next chapter without him. Too fragile, too cautious, a former MVP living on borrowed time. Every broadcast mentioned it, every defender tested it, every fan feared it. The explosiveness wasn't the same. The confidence looked quieter. The knees came with an asterisk. And yet, here were the Bulls. Second round of the playoffs, tied 1-1 with LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. A series that wasn't just basketball, it was psychological warfare. Because when LeBron James walks into your building in the playoffs, he doesn't just bring a team, he brings inevitability, pressure, that subtle feeling that no matter what you do, the ending is already decided. But Derrick Rose had lived with inevitability before, and he learned something from it. This Bulls team wasn't flashy. They weren't favored. They weren't healthy in the way contenders are supposed to be healthy. But they had something dangerous. A lead guard who had already lost everything once. That's the part defenders don't know how to guard. Game 3 was tight, ugly at times, physical. Every possession felt like it mattered twice. Rose wasn't dominating with speed anymore. He was dominating with timing, with patience, with angles only experience teaches. Each drive was calculated. Each pull-up carried restraint. And that restraint, it made defenders hesitate. By the final seconds, the Bulls were clinging to a one-point lead. The Cavs had just taken it back. The clock was bleeding out. Timeout. This is the moment where most teams look for safety, a decoy, a bailout, someone to avoid the spotlight. But Tom Thibodeau didn't draw up fear. He put the ball in Derrick Rose's hands. Not because Rose was the fastest player on the floor anymore, but because he was the bravest. As Rose walked toward the inbound spot, the building was vibrating. 18,000 people holding their breath, not just for a win, but for validation. Because this wasn't just about going up 2-1 in a series. This was about answering a question fans were scared to ask out loud. Can Derrick Rose still deliver when everything is on the line? LeBron knew it too. You can see it in the body language, the awareness, the respect. This wasn't pity defense. This was real defense. The ball came in. Rose caught it with his back to the basket. Tristan Thompson on him. Younger, longer, fresher. The kind of defender analytics would say has the advantage. But analytics don't measure memory. They don't measure the years Rose spent rehabbing in silence. They don't measure what it feels like to be crowned at 22, then questioned at 26. They don't measure the weight of Chicago watching a hometown kid try to become himself again. Rose turned, one dribble, clock ticking. This wasn't a moment built on speed, it was built on faith. He rose up, awkward angle, hand in his face, balance slightly off, and then the ball left his fingertips. High arc, backboard, silence. And then the building exploded. Not just because it went in, but because of who it came from. Derrick Rose, the question mark, had just answered everything in one shot. The Bulls took a 2-1 series lead, but more importantly, Derrick Rose took something back that night. And if you think that shot was luck, if you think it was just a bounce off glass, stay with us, because what happened next changed how the entire league looked at Derrick Rose again.
The replay makes it look simple. A catch, a dribble, a shot. But the replay lies, because it removes the weight of everything that led up to that moment, and that weight is the real story. By the time Derrick Rose caught that inbound pass, he had already played nearly 40 minutes of playoff basketball against a team designed to break you mentally. Cleveland wasn't just defending him physically, they were testing his patience. Every drive was met with bodies. Every lane felt smaller than it looked. Every mistake felt louder. This wasn't the kind of game where you build rhythm easily. This was the kind of game where rhythm has to be earned. Rose understood that early. You could see it in the first quarter. He wasn't forcing the issue. He wasn't trying to remind anyone who he used to be. He was reading help defenders, reading how quickly Tristan Thompson stepped up, reading when LeBron shaded toward the lane and when he stayed home. That's not instinct, that's experience. This version of Derrick Rose didn't attack recklessly. He attacked selectively, and Cleveland noticed. By the second half, the Cavaliers weren't daring Rose to shoot anymore. They weren't backing off either. They were stuck in between. That's the worst place to be against a guard who understands space. Every hesitation dribble forced a decision. Every half-step freeze created just enough separation. And separation, even for half a second, is deadly in playoff basketball. But here's what makes this night different. Rose wasn't chasing the big moment. He let the game come to him. That's why when the final possession arrived, it didn't feel rushed. It felt inevitable. The Cavs had done everything right, statistically speaking. They kept Rose from exploding. They made him work for every look. They avoided fouling. But there's something numbers don't account for. Trust. When the Bulls broke the huddle, there was no confusion about who would take the shot. No second option, no decoy. This wasn't nostalgia. This wasn't loyalty. This was belief built over 48 minutes of controlled pressure. Rose wasn't hot. He was steady. As the ball came in, Thompson played it correctly, stayed square, hands up, didn't bite. From a coaching standpoint, this was good defense. From a storytelling standpoint, it was perfect. Because this wasn't about beating the defender. It was about beating the doubt. Rose didn't try to get all the way to the rim. He didn't try to draw contact. He didn't look for a whistle. He took what the moment allowed. A step to his left, a rise that looked slightly off balance, a release that felt delayed by a fraction of a second. That delay mattered. It threw off the timing. It forced the contest just a bit late. It created the arc, and then the glass. There's a reason bank shots feel different. They aren't pure. They aren't clean. They feel improvised, like the player trusted instinct over perfection. And when it dropped, you could feel something break. Not on the court, in the narrative. Because suddenly, this wasn't a story about what Derrick Rose couldn't do anymore. It became a story about what he still could. Look at the reactions. LeBron didn't argue. He didn't complain. He stood there, still, processing. The Cavs bench didn't explode in protest. They froze. Because deep down, they knew. This wasn't a fluke. This was a moment that had been building all night. And in Chicago, the reaction was different from any other playoff buzzer beater you'll ever see. There was joy, yes, but there was also relief. Years of fear, years of waiting, years of wondering if the magic was gone forever, all released in one bounce off the glass. Fans weren't celebrating a lead in the series. They were celebrating closure. Proof that Derrick Rose's story didn't end in an operating room. Proof that his confidence wasn't a memory. Proof that he could still stand at the center of the basketball world, even if only for a moment, and own it. And that's the part Cleveland felt walking off the floor. Not the loss, the shift. Because when a player like Derrick Rose does something like that, it doesn't just change a game, it changes how you prepare for the next one. It introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty is dangerous, especially against a player who has already learned how to survive without certainty. And that's why this shot didn't just put the Bulls up 2-1, it rewrote the emotional balance of the series. And in the next section, we're going to talk about why that mattered more than the scoreboard, and how this moment forced the league to look at Derrick Rose differently, again.
By the next morning, the highlight was everywhere. The bank's three, the clock hitting 0, the crowd erupting. But highlights have a problem. They make moments look finished.
What they didn't show was what happened after, inside locker rooms, inside scouting reports, inside the minds of the people who had already decided what Derrick Rose was supposed to be by 2015. Because that shot didn't just win a game, it forced a recalculation. For Cleveland, it was unsettling in a way losses usually aren't. They didn't lose because of a breakdown. They didn't lose because of inexperience. They lost because a player they thought they understood did something that didn't fit the file. Derrick Rose was supposed to be manageable now, predictable, limited. You could live with him taking tough shots. You could live with him settling. What you weren't supposed to live with was him owning the moment. That's what this did. It turned Derrick Rose back into a problem, and problems change how teams behave. Suddenly, the conversation around the series shifted. It wasn't just about LeBron imposing his will. It wasn't just about Cleveland's depth. It became about whether Chicago had something dangerous again, something that didn't show up in box scores: belief. Inside the Bulls' locker room, there was no chest pounding, no dramatic speeches, just quiet confidence. Teammates didn't talk about the shot the way fans did. They talked about the calm, about how Rose never looked rushed, about how he never looked scared of missing. That matters, because stars don't just score points, they set emotional temperature. And that night, Derrick Rose cooled the room. For years, injuries had made every big moment feel fragile, like something could be taken away at any second. This one felt different. This one felt earned. And that's why it lingered. Even nationally, the tone changed. Analysts stopped framing Rose as a comeback story. They started framing him as a factor. Not the same player he once was, but still dangerous, still capable of bending a series, still capable of forcing adjustments. And that's the part Cleveland had to sit with. Because adjustments cost energy, they cost focus, they pull attention away from everything else. Now, instead of dictating terms, the Cavaliers had to react. How aggressive do you play Rose at the end of games? Do you switch or stay home? Do you trust length or help? None of those questions had comfortable answers. And when questions pile up in the playoffs, they don't just affect strategy, they affect confidence. For Derrick Rose personally, this moment did something quieter, but just as important. It reminded him who he was allowed to be. Not the version people expected, not the version people debated, just himself. A player willing to take responsibility even if it didn't work out. That's a kind of freedom injuries try to steal. And for one night, Rose took it back. You could see it in the games that followed. Not in explosion, but in posture. The way he moved, the way he called for the ball, the way he trusted his reads. The fear of failure wasn't driving him anymore. And when that fear disappears, even briefly, players become dangerous again. But here's the part most people miss. This shot didn't erase the injuries. It didn't rewind the clock. It didn't promise a happy ending. What it did was something more honest. It carved out a moment that belonged entirely to Derrick Rose, untouched by what came before or after. That's why fans still talk about it. Not because it was the biggest shot in the playoffs, but because it was pure. No narrative manipulation, no exaggeration. Just a man, a ball, and the courage to take the shot. And in a league obsessed with legacy and rings, moments like that get overlooked. But players remember them. Fans remember them. Because sometimes a career isn't defined by what lasts the longest. It's defined by what survives the hardest. And Derrick Rose's shot in Game 3 survived everything people said he couldn't. Which brings us to the final part of this story, the part that explains why this moment still matters today, and why Derrick Rose's legacy can't be measured the way people keep trying to measure it.
Years later, when people talk about Derrick Rose, they usually start in the same place. The MVP season, the injuries, the what could have been. It's a neat timeline, clean, easy to debate. But moments like that Game 3 buzzer beater don't fit neatly into timelines, because they don't belong to the rise, and they don't belong to the fall.
they exist in between. And that's why they matter more than people realize. The 2015 playoffs weren't supposed to be about Derrick Rose reclaiming anything. They were supposed to be about transition, a former superstar adjusting to reality, a franchise learning to move forward. That shot interrupted all of it. It reminded everyone, fans, analysts, even Rose himself, that careers aren't just arcs, they're collections of moments, and some moments refuse to be downgraded. Think about how rare that is. In sports, once a player is labeled past his prime, everything they do gets filtered through that lens. Good games become flashes, big shots become nostalgia. But this didn't feel like nostalgia. It felt current, urgent, alive. That's why it still gets replayed, why it still gets talked about. Because it doesn't ask you to remember who Derrick Rose was. It asks you to acknowledge who he still could be, even if only for seconds at a time. And that idea makes people uncomfortable, because it breaks the clean stories we like to tell. We like endings. We like certainty. Derrick Rose never gave us that. Instead, he gave us moments that lived outside logic. Moments where pain didn't get the final say. Moments where expectation didn't win. That buzzer beater didn't change the series outcome in the long run. Chicago didn't win the championship. Rose didn't return to MVP form. And that's exactly why the shot matters. Because its value isn't tied to success. It's tied to defiance. In that moment, Derrick Rose wasn't proving anything to critics. He wasn't chasing legacy points. He was choosing belief over fear. And belief in the NBA is fragile. One missed shot can take it away. One injury can erase it. But for that split second, as the ball left his hand and kissed the glass, belief won. That's why the United Center exploded the way it did. Not because it was a playoff winner, but because it was a reminder. A reminder that joy doesn't always need permission, that greatness doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just shows up, quietly, when everyone least expects it. And that's the irony. But that shot was loud in all the ways that matter. It spoke to players fighting their own physical limits, to fans holding on to hope longer than logic allows, to anyone who's been told their best days are behind them. Derrick Rose didn't shout after the shot. He didn't celebrate wildly. He just turned, calm, composed, like he'd been there before. And maybe that's the point. Greatness doesn't disappear. It adapts. It finds new shapes, new speeds, new ways to survive. That's the legacy of Derrick Rose. Not dominance, not durability, but resilience. And that one shot, banked in off the glass, frozen in time, captures that better than any stat ever could. So the next time someone reduces his career to injuries, remember this moment. Remember the silence before the shot, the explosion after, the disbelief on Cleveland's bench, the tears in the crowd. Because some players are measured in championships, others are measured in moments that refuse to fade. And Derrick Rose gave us one that still echoes, even now.